decision changed aviation forever. Boeing created something that would become the most coveted seat in the sky, but the real reason behind the 747's mysterious upper deck has nothing to do with passenger luxury. In this video, we'll uncover the shocking truth behind why Boeing built this iconic hump, reveal how airlines transformed it from a simple afterthought into the ultimate flying experience, and discover why modern aircraft are abandoning this legendary design forever. The story you're about to hear will completely change how you see this aviation icon. Our story begins in 1965, when two aviation giants made a deal that would reshape the skies forever. Juan Trippe, the visionary chairman of Pan Am, approached Boeing with an audacious request. But here's where it gets interesting. The upper deck wasn't even part of the original plan. Boeing was actually competing for a massive US Air Force contract called the CXHLS, which required a high-capacity military transport aircraft with nose-loading capability. Boeing met this requirement by placing the cockpit above the main deck, creating what we now know as that famous hump. But Boeing lost the military contract to Lockheed. What happened next would create one of the most recognizable aircraft in history. Here's the first shocking truth. Boeing's engineers thought the 747 would have a limited passenger role. During the design phase in the 1960s, the Boeing 2707 supersonic transport was on the horizon, and that was believed to be the future of passenger air transportation. Boeing designed the 747 so it could be easily adapted to carry freight and remain in production even if sales of the passenger version declined. The cockpit was placed on a shortened upper deck so that a freight-loading door could be included in the nose cone. But what would they do with that mysterious space behind the cockpit? In early models, what to do with the small space in the pod behind the cockpit was not clear, and this was initially specified as a lounge area with no permanent seating. What happened next would transform air travel forever. Airlines didn't just fill this space with seats, they created something magical. Pan Am turned the Jumbo's entire upper deck into a restaurant in the sky for its first-class passengers. The restaurant sported a full menu, including roast beef carved tableside. But Pan Am wasn't the only airline with grand visions for this space. If you're finding this story as fascinating as we did, feel free to give the video a quick like. It helps more people discover it. And if you want more stories like this one, you might want to stick around. Now let's talk about what almost killed the magic of the upper deck. At first, the upper deck was a marvel, an exclusive space in the sky. Airlines like Pan Am treated it like royalty. Some other airlines turned it into lounges, some into cocktail bars, and others offered fine dining mid-flight. It became a status symbol, the most coveted square footage on any commercial plane. But the magic didn't last forever. That hump, elegant as it looked, was extra space. In the same vein, it was extra weight. It disrupted airflow, and most of all, it burned fuel. The design that helped Boeing win hearts was now costing airlines millions in fuel bills. So what did airlines do? Some stripped out the lounges and replaced them with ordinary seats, trying to make up the cost per passenger. Others abandoned the upper deck altogether. It was too heavy, too inefficient, and too outdated for what airlines needed. But just when it looked like the hump had outlived its usefulness, one airline decided to go in the opposite direction. Lufthansa didn't downsize it, they stretched it. On their 747, 8 models, they extended the upper deck almost the full length of the fuselage, turning it into a true second level that could seat over 90 passengers. It was a bold move, doubling down on a design most others were scaling back. And suddenly, the upper deck wasn't just a nostalgic lounge anymore. It became a fully functional, revenue-generating upper cabin. Lufthansa redefined the hump and gave the Queen of the Skies a new kind of life. Fast forward a few decades, the aviation world shifted. Then came the twin jets, sleek, efficient birds like the Boeing 777, Airbus A330, and later the revolutionary 787 Dreamliner. These planes could do almost everything the 747 could: fly long-haul routes, hold a polished upper deck glimpse, but with 2 engines instead of 4, and most critically, with far lower fuel burn. Suddenly, airlines started to ask, why fly the giant hump when these twins could punch the same distance for less? Orders for the 747 slowed to a trickle. Iconic carriers began pulling their 747 fleets. Pan Am, Qantas, British Airways, some even retired them years earlier than expected. The Queen of the Skies looked to be losing her crown. That's when Boeing revealed a secret card, a design that saved the 747's future, the 747-400 Combi. Let's create a vivid picture. A plane that could carry passengers up front and cargo in the back, all on the same flight. The cockpit's hump stayed intact, but behind it, the main deck now had a mix of seats and freight. Big side cargo doors, reinforced floors, and removable seating. This was genius adaptability. Airlines love the flexibility. Passenger demand dipped, fill it with freight. Peak season, fill it with people. The first 747-400M Combi rolled out in June 1989, delivered to KLM, followed by European carriers like Lufthansa and Air France, with over 60 built in the series. It was a mini climax. The hump suddenly meant two revenue streams on one flight. The 747th had carved out its place again, but the skies were getting more competitive. And then came the Airbus A380. This aircraft changed the conversation. It had two full-length decks and could carry over 800 passengers if needed. That was more than anything flying at the time, and on paper, it was more efficient too. Airbus said the A380 could move more people while using less fuel per seat than the 747. Naturally, airlines paid attention. Some started retiring their 747s early. Others backed out of planned orders. The A380 felt like a clean break, a sign that aviation was moving forward. And with that, the 747 started to disappear from more and more routes. But that wasn't the end of the story. While the spotlight shifted, something else was happening behind the scenes. Cargo demand was going up fast. Online shopping, next-day delivery, global supply chains, suddenly, moving freight became just as important as moving passengers. And this is where the 747 had a trick no one else could match. Because the cockpit sat on that upper hump, the entire nose of the aircraft could swing open. That meant cargo could be loaded in from the front, huge items, heavy equipment, oversized pallets. It was something the newer jets, even the A380, simply couldn't do. UPS recognized the advantage. They now operate 30 Boeing 747-8 freighters, the largest fleet of that model anywhere in the world. Atlas Air wasn't far behind. They placed new 747 orders all the way through to year 2024, including the very last ones Boeing ever built. By year 2025, Atlas was warning of a global freighter shortage that could stretch out for another 15 years. The industry needed aircraft with serious capacity, and the 747 was still delivering. So while the A380 won a lot of attention in the passenger world, the 747's hump quietly became the backbone of modern cargo. What started as a strange design decision for pilots and lounges, it ended up being the perfect solution for freight. So here's what most people never realized about the hump. Boeing never built it for passengers. It may have become a home for lounges, private dining rooms, or later premium cabins, but that was never the real reason it existed. The cockpit was placed up there to make room for freight. That design, quirky as it looked, was about utility. Boeing played the long game, and they played it well. While other aircraft came and went, the 747 adapted. And thanks to that raised cockpit and nose-loading feature, it stuck around. Freight became its second life, and that upper deck, once a lounge, became the key that unlocked decades of continued relevance. In total, Boeing built and sold over 1,570 747s across all variants. The jet served passengers, presidents, and packages. It was flexible in a way few other aircraft could match. That's why even when airlines stopped ordering new ones for commercial service, freight companies kept coming back. By the time the final model rolled off the production line, the 747 wasn't just a plane anymore, it was a symbol. Pilots called the upper deck the penthouse. Flying up there wasn't just a job, it was a privilege. It became a dream for many who trained for years just to sit behind that curved glass and command the queen of the skies. But even legends have to land eventually. In year 2023, Boeing shut down the 747 production line for good. The last unit ever built, a 747-8 freighter, was delivered to Atlas Air, the same company that had kept the legacy going when most others had moved on. The delivery was marked with a quiet ceremony and one final takeoff from Everett, Washington, where the very first 747 took flight back in 1969. The plane was registered as N863GT. It flew a special route that day, drawing a crown in the sky over Washington State as a final tribute. A goodbye message to the world. And just like that, the jet that started as an ambitious gamble, with a strange hump and uncertain future, closed its chapter as one of the most iconic machines ever built. The truth is, that mysterious upper deck was never about comfort or style. Boeing wanted to stay ahead of the game, and they did exactly that for more than half a century. Next time you catch a glimpse of a 747 on the runway, just pause for a second and look at the hump. It's easy to think of it as just a funny design quirk, a relic of another era. But that upper deck carries more meaning than most people realize. It wasn't drawn up for style or comfort. It was born out of necessity. Boeing had placed the cockpit up there to make room for a freight door in the nose. It was a functional decision, nothing more. But that function created a form the world would never forget. What started as a technical solution turned into a space airlines could shape into anything. In its prime, the upper deck was a quiet escape, fine dining, champagne lounges, piano bars in the sky. Then it became first-class heaven. And eventually, for some airlines, just more seats. But what gave the hump its true legacy wasn't any of that. It was cargo. That raised cockpit allowed the entire nose to open, which meant the 747 could carry things no other jet could. Massive parts, time-sensitive freight, humanitarian aid. The kind of cargo that needed to move fast and wouldn't fit anywhere else. While other aircraft retired, the 747 evolved. It stayed relevant because it had something no one else offered. The hump went from afterthought to upper deck, from upper deck to upper hand. And through all the shifts in aviation, supersonic promises, twin-engine takeovers, full-length double-deck competitors, it quietly kept doing its job. That's why, decades later, the hump is still flying. Beyond its design, it's also a symbol of how good design can adapt, survive, and outlast everything that tried to replace it. It's the reason the 747 still means something today. Now that you've seen what went into the 747's upper deck, it's easier to appreciate just how much thought was behind it. From the outside, it might just look like a strange curve on top of a big airplane. But behind that curve was decades of design, change, and purpose. Airlines found different ways to use it. Some made it a lounge, others turned it into business class. Then later, it helped move cargo around the world. It kept finding new roles to play, even when other planes came and went. That's probably why the 747 stayed in service for so long. It was built to adapt, not just impress. If you've enjoyed learning about this aircraft and seeing it in a new light, feel free to give the video a like. We'll keep bringing you stories that dig a little deeper into the machines we often take for granted. And if there's another part of a plane you've always been curious about, let us know in the comments. Maybe it's something you've noticed while flying, or a design you've seen and never quite understood. We'd love to hear from you, and who knows, it might just be the next story we tell.